All right, welcome back. We are going to be continuing a little bit of what we discussed last time. I know I missed one of the topics, but we're just going to, again, keep these fluid, keep them moving, keep them about 5 minutes. So let's talk about some of the things we want to go over. We're going to talk about variable types, int, float, or integer, float, double, string, and character, and then operators, plus, minus, multiplication, division. So converting integers to strings, doubles, float, longs, and strings slash integers to other variable types, and you can do that in Java. And then we'll kind of talk about how that works a little bit in more detail when we get to that point. And then we'll do a little bit of review. So as you remember from last video, you have to do your public I don't know if static is necessarily 100% necessary on main, but I think so because you don't expect main typically to return things. You expect the main to be your primary execution, but we'll double check that and I'll get back to you. So public static void, and then if let's say I made new main string brackets args. So ideally, this doesn't throw any errors, right? It's not saying, hey, we have an issue here, and then I'll just sys out control plus space to autocomplete, and then I'll say, this is testing2, not testing.java, right? So it's not giving me an error. It's not saying, hey, you don't have main in here. And if I save this and try to run it, it's actually going to give me an error saying, no, we need main. Oh, and so I guess static is required because it says, please define the main method as public static void main. So in any case, this won't work. It's always the compiler is going to look, depending on which script you're running, which one is the main script. So let's go ahead and change that to main and rerun this. Let's save it. And you're starting to see this is testing2, not testing.java. So this worked. And we have now two separate projects in that same my first project folder with main. Now I'm not going to say that I'm a pro Java programmer and I don't know if this is good practice. And a lot of the things that we've done, like from what I remember in school, was we would create a main file within our project and then reference it in other projects. So you would have in testing2.java, you wouldn't have a main, you would have something else, like another series of like functions or constructors. And testing.java or main, this like would be your main one. You would run this one and it would reference this one. You would never execute the non-main one. I mean, you could hypothetically if you had certain setups and things that would work, but essentially you would always run it from the base file. So that's just a really quick, brief explanation, but don't worry too greatly about that for now. As long as the one that you're running, the Java file that you're trying to run has its own main in it, you're fine. So let's go ahead and establish a scanner variable. So remember from last time, it was this import java util.scanner. So let's go here, import java.util.scanner. I think it's lowercase, right? Let's just double check. Yep, uppercase. And then remember, you always have to terminate with a semicolon. So there you go. Creation scanner importation of scanner library. And then we will go ahead and talk about some establishment of variables. So let's say if you wanted to do an integer, right? An integer is established with the quick keyword int. So int then says, all right, whatever you're going to give me next after this space that we put in here is I'm expecting a variable name. So let's call it number var. So this is just saying we're planning on storing an integer number into this variable, and we're going to set that equal to 0. We could also have said, int numvar semicolon, and then just assigned numvar equals 0 here. But we can't. Again, I'm trying to be more manual with this, and we can't just assume. I'd rather just write it explicitly unless we don't need it that way for some specific reason. So I can then make another one, and I can say int number var2 equals 0, and then I can even assign a value to it for example 4 and 2, right? I can do that. These are now integer values stored into numvar1 and 2, and then I can actually make a third thing called int result. I can leave it as such, plain, without an equal afterwards, as I was saying. And then I can say result equals number var plus number var2, and then I can sys out control space, and I can actually write result here. So if I do this right now, it'll actually output the result of 2 plus 4. So all I did was I said result equals, because you always need the result, the final value it's planning on being on the left side, and then the 2 values you want, or more than 2 values, but it's going to read from left to right. So it's going to say this value and then added to this value and then terminate that line. So that's essentially what this is doing. And I think that is a good stopping point for now, and we'll continue in a second.